2419 La Famiglia Pizzeria.
22 minutes before 10 o'clock. Nice looking Thursday morning. Hope you're doing well. Got a nice, I guess, a typical forecast right now. 60% chance that we'll see rain today. And again, it's afternoon thunderstorms are the most likely time for you to get that rain, and high temperatures in the mid to upper 80s. So it's kind of typical. This morning, there was a news story about a man who... I think we're getting the call now.
Okay. I know.
This is the way it is all the time.
I know, all the time.
All the time. You get
all
a call?
All the time.
I'll just have to answer the phone on the air, so we'll just go straight to the phone. Good morning. I don't know if you're our guest tonight. Is this Linda Dahl? Linda? Are you there?
It's Linda.
Oh, good morning, Linda. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. I apologize for answering while we were on the air, but we weren't sure whether you were calling in. Are you in New York right now?
I am.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thank you.
Let me introduce Linda. If you've ever known anybody, especially a younger person who is on drugs, who is even overdoing alcohol, young man or young woman, the guys you don't know what to do. You're lost. It's absolutely a very frustrating thing, and if it's somebody you love, somebody you care about, it's even harder. But there is a difference between, not that both of them don't need to be saved from that lifestyle, both men and women, young men and young women, but young women have a different thing that happens to them simply because they're young women. And Linda has written a book about this. It's called Loving Our Addicted Daughters Back to Life. Linda has a list of credentials that we're so honored to have her on the air with. She's a New York Times bestselling author. I guess you got that. She's the recipient of the New York Times Notable Book of the Year Award and the Best Creative Writing Award by Writers in the Sky. And she's been featured on NPR, the BBC, and on Canadian, German, French, and Scandinavian broadcasts. So today on Ocala broadcast. It's an honor to have you, Linda. Thank you for calling in and for being on the air with us. And this is an important work that you've done here. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Well, I really did it for people like myself, who are, as you said, either in the midst of trying to figure out if their child, in this case a daughter, may be using drugs, if it's escalated to risky drug use or dependence, and I couldn't find a book. I wrote this book because I couldn't find a book like it to help me, and so.
Okay, so tell me your story, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. I'm very open about it. I'm very proud to say that I am in long-term recovery myself. But when it came to my daughter, as a friend of mine said, we have a veil over our eyes when it comes to our children. And by that I mean, it's so painful to come to the realization that your child is using drugs, harmful drugs, and all of the things that can happen as a result of that. So my daughter was a kind of perfect example, if you will, of the type of kid who is now in droves getting involved in risky drug use. Mid-teens, puberty is when it really hits hard, and for girls especially, depression is something that increases nearly 3 times as high as for boys during puberty, and depression is something that can drive somebody into self-medicating. And then she escalated to, pot, pills, and Oxycontin, which is, much stronger than morphine.
Right. So
from there to heroin.
Do you? I don't know. I'm gonna probably get somebody mad with this, but let me just ask the question. But I mean, do you think that we are, or the commercialization of pharmaceuticals is partly to blame, because you'll see commercials that basically say, if you're feeling this way, then here's a pill that'll help you get better. And of course, it's ended with usually a disclaimer that takes up 20% of the advertising time, and usually read in a quiet voice and a fast speaking voice, or if it's in print, it's in small print. But I mean, even when I was a kid, I remember Compose. Remember Compose? C-O-M-P-O-Z.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody remembers that one. But do you think we've commercialized psychological health. Not to say that there's not drugs out there that people aren't doing recreational, and that's another way to get into it. But when you mention Oxycontin and some of those drugs, I think some of those have been marketed to us that way.
Well, also, I do agree with you. The point about oxys and other opioids, as they're called, which one expert calls heroin in a pill, is that they were pushed very heavily by the pharmaceuticals as, for something that became a big concern, pain control. But as with other things that you pointed out, then ironically, so many people become dependent on these pain pills while there's so many other therapies that they could be doing to help alleviate their pain that they wouldn't become addicted to.
You mentioned that you also had drug issues. I'm assuming that you're no longer captive to that lifestyle. Am I right?
No, I have many years in recovery, I'm happy to say, and yeah.
So I guess the first question would be, did you have the same veil over your eyes that somebody who's never gone through a drug problem would have, or was it a different veil regarding your daughter?
It's hard for me to say.
You don't know.
But I think essentially it is the same veil in that there's a kind of default mechanism, at least let me talk as a parent, and as a mother, where the instinct is to protect the child. And what happens is that becomes confused as you go along with the fact that you are not protecting your child, you're protecting the addiction. And it took me a while to understand the difference, to begin to accept the difference. It's one thing to have an illness yourself, it's another thing when you're dealing with somebody else.
The book is titled Loving Our Addicted Daughters Back to Life. Loving is the biggest word, and to me it's the most important word, especially when you're dealing with somebody who needs to be brought back to health, whether it's because of self-imposed lifestyle problems or an actual disease of, I don't know if the word actual was appropriate there, but... And then we'll take a little break, and I want to ask about a couple things, like why is it different for girls than it would be for boys? And also, is tough love one of the ways to love? Is tough love even love? So we'll continue our conversation when we come back. We'll be right back. This is WOCN.
Hi, I'm Seth with AA Lock, Dock, and Security. Have you ever thought about the locks or security on your house or business? Have you ever wondered why the keys to your new car cost so much? Well, at AA Lock, Dock, and Security, we can help with securing your valuables. We can even replace those expensive transponder keys. We can give you the knowledge that no one else will. Call AA Lock, Dock, and Security at 867-1965. That's 867-1965.
Your weekends are getting a little retool.
Swear to God, not making a joke.
Check this out. New shows? Check. We are Platform. Some new talent? Check. Let's welcome the guys.
Let's get it going.
Arnie Spanier.
Unbelievable.
TJ Reeves.
This is what you get.
Your weekends are on fire.
Because that's how exotic it is.
We are Platform.
What are the most common questions those nearing retirement are asking? Will I outlive my money? Retirement questions like these and many more will be answered every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on Planning for a Better and Safer Retirement with hosts Francois and Julian Pozenet. Francois and Julian will help you put your retirement puzzle together. Catch Planning for a Better and Safer Retirement Saturdays at 9 a.m. on Ocala's News Talk, The Source 96.3 FM and 1370 AM.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, more clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm around, especially this afternoon. It could lead to localized flooding. The high today, 86 to 90. Tonight, partly to mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, those 72 to 76. More clouds and sun tomorrow with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm or two around, mainly during the afternoon hours, high 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
All right, 12 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Linda Dahl is on the phone. She's written a book that is probably not equaled out there. There's probably not another book that has this information in it. It's called Loving Our Addicted Daughters Back to Life. It is a guidebook for parents, and she's going through that brave thing that many brave people do, and it's first telling her own story, and then, of course, her daughter's story. So, Linda, I wanted to ask you this. When you say loving, is tough love something to consider? And I don't even know how you would apply tough love in this case, but I'll just kind of use that as a starting point. What do you think?
Well, one of the things I think is that the terminology can get in our way,
right.
And I don't want to tell any parent where their boundaries should be, because that's not my way. But what I believe is that sometimes what happens is that we parents and also I've talked to nurses in hospitals who get the same way. We get so angry at the symptoms of the disease that we end up being very negative to the sufferer of the disease. And it is, by the way, a chronic brain disease, addiction. So the more we can understand and learn about what happens in addiction that makes in this case, the young woman do things that make us crazy, the more we're able to separate the addiction from the child. And I think that the kind of love I'm talking about, I know personally, and I know from dealing with my daughter too, that it's just a stew of negativity. That's one of the symptoms of the disease. The person who's suffering from it feels absolutely beyond terrible about themselves. They may not ever say that, but they do. So the more we can give them the right kind of love, and by that I mean help loving them towards health, do everything we can to help them get healthy, and do nothing to help keep the disease alive. And it's, of course, very tough to do that when it comes to the crunch.
Right. Do you know?
But yet, it's a good guideline.
Okay, I've never had a daughter or a son, for that matter, that was addicted to drugs, and yet I've had friends, and I've had this conversation, and I'll try to tell you two of them because there's two different ones. One, I would sit down across from the table, coffee table, whatever, restaurant table, and say, you know what, you've got everything going for you. You're brilliant. You've got talents. And you're really wasting your life. You're really hurting yourself by continually taking those antidepressant drugs. It's really hurting you. Oh, my gosh. It was like throwing rocks right back at me. What are you saying about me? You're absolutely wrong. Yeah. And, of course, what? And Robin knows who I'm talking about. Yeah. So, 5 or 10 years later, yeah, she's admitting that was the problem back then. But my attempt to have a loving approach did no good at all. No good at all, and in fact, it was the worst thing I probably ever did with that friendship. All right, the other one I can think of, I did sort of the same thing, and it was more or less, yeah, you're right, I know, and didn't change any behavior though. It didn't change anything.
Well, when you're talking about a parent, and I understand what you're saying, really, what we're really talking about is at least you have some kind of influence over them beyond what you can say. And it should start early. I mean, in the sense that, okay, here's the deal. If you are given a random drug test and it comes up positive, let's say, then I take the car keys or I take the cell phone, whatever it is. You work that out beforehand, and you do not get it back until you get... Now, that's the thing you can start with. But you model with them early on that they need to become responsible. And by the way, I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing that you said that to your friend, because sometimes we plant seeds that sprout years later.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, we have to take the risk of getting people angry. And because sometimes the truth has to be said. So we always want to say to them, I love you. I am doing this because I'm concerned about your safety and your health. That's the bottom line.
So why is that different than the way you would treat a son?
Oh, well, in some ways it's the same. It's simply that with girls we have to be aware that, number one, all the experts say they get sicker faster, it takes longer for them to recover, and they relapse more. And a lot of that has to do with physiology and neurology, actually, and good old sex hormones. Because it turns out that when they go into puberty and there's all the fluctuations of estrogen, studies have now been done, with the new brain imaging and all the things that they can do that actually show that when their estrogen is too high, it throws off, it's like a cascade of throwing off other mood chemicals in the brain, serotonin and so forth. And then what that does is it calls for more of something to feel better. And that is one of the things that leads to taking drugs and continuing to take them. There's a whole bunch of things that I describe in my book that scientists have discovered about certain differences that are crucial for girls and women, and also for boys.
Do you know this? There's another thing. I don't know if you brought it up in the book or not, but it's the predatory male who uses drugs, like the way Bill Cosby has been portrayed lately.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's probably the famous one. I'm sure it happens all the time, though. But if you're thinking about your daughters, that's another area to be afraid of, is that they're going to be addicted to drugs because some guy out there is giving them drugs so that he can have his way with her.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to tell you, you bring up the most important thing, too, which is trauma, of physical or sexual violence against women is, of all ages, whether they're using substances or not, is freakily high. And so one of the things with women who are using drugs is that they are more exposed to being in trauma-making situations. Trauma has to be dealt with properly when you're dealing with an addicted person, because it absolutely trashes their self-worth. And there have been some wonderful new therapies developed for it.
Oh, why is it, though, that some medical professionals, they will get on these drugs voluntarily, and they know better? I mean, they probably have seen, because we hear of nurses and doctors that all of a sudden they're addicted to drugs, but they know better because they go through the classes and they see firsthand what it does to other people, but they don't think that it's going to happen to them.
No, that's a good question. I think that's classic for, however, anyone. Nobody imagines, and I can say this from my own experience, that, the stumbling drunk on the corner or the stoned out housewife who can't leave her, she can't even get up to make dinner. Nobody imagines that progression of the disease is going to affect them. They're going to control it. They're going to tweak it. They're just going to use a little bit of it, and it feels good. But what happens is their brain chemistry is very quickly affected, and it's screaming for more.
Right.
So it's all sectors of the population, are susceptible to becoming, I hate to say it, but to using drugs dangerously.
We're a very voyeuristic society also. I mean, you look at the talk shows, I can't think of the actress's name, but there was at least two that I remember from in the David Letterman thing when he wrapped up his career recently. Mm-hmm. They were doing flashbacks, and there was at least two that were considered highlights. And they were highlights because the actresses that were on the show were clearly either on drugs or intoxicated, and it was just a funny moment. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is not funny. That is somebody really going through a hard time, and we're making that out to be entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, that brings up the whole thing of stigma towards addiction. And one of the things that, the more we learn about the disease, I can't deal with all of these battles, I can fight the battle or try to, for parents and other people who are concerned about how the heck do I deal with this problem.
Yeah, that's it. Because we can't change the world, but maybe we can change our world. Mm-hmm. And I think any parent whose attention was piqued by knowing the topic today is very grateful that you have taken the time to put into writing something that might help them deal with a problem that is almost seems stoppable. If you're going to the schools and the guidance counselors are at a loss, and everybody's at a loss, this book will hopefully give you some guidance.
Wonderful.
The book is here. I have one copy, so call me if you want the copy I have, and I'll give it to you. The rest of us have to go buy it. It's called Loving Our Addicted Daughters Back to Life. It's written by Linda Dahl, Dahl. So call me if you want this one. Linda, do you have a website for the book?
Well, yes, it's www.lindadahl.com.
Okay.
And also it's available on Amazon.
Okay, easy enough. I think you've made a great contribution to us by doing this book, and you will probably save some lives and some relationships
Oh, that's my hope.
simply by writing this book and being so honest and straightforward with us about this topic. Linda, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Thank you, Larry. It was great to be on with you.
It was really good. We'll take a little break. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, more clouds and sun with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm around, especially this afternoon. It could lead to localized flooding. The high today, 86 to 90. Tonight, partly to mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, those 72 to 76. More clouds and sun tomorrow with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm or two around, mainly during the afternoon hours, high 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source. Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville.